Shinpei is on his way back to Hitogashima Island when he has a dream about his friend Ushio. In the dream, Ushio asks him how long it's been since he last visited. Before leaving, she tells him to find her and protect her younger sister, Mio. When Shinpei tries to stop her, he reaches out but bumps into something. He wakes up and realizes he has accidentally run into a woman. When he says sorry, she slaps him and walks away. When Shinpei arrives at the small island, memories come rushing back. Hitogashima is a quiet place with about 700 people. Most of them fish or work with tourists. Shinpei hasn't been back for 2 years, and this time, he's here for a sad reason, Ushio's funeral. It's July 22nd. As soon as he steps off the boat, Mio rushes toward him on her bike. She loses control and crashes into the water. She jokes about wanting a swim, trying to act cool. After Shinpei helps her out, she asks about his life in Tokyo and wonders if he visits places like Shibuya. Shinpei admits he doesn't go out much. As they walk to the funeral, they talk about how the island has changed. Mio says there are a lot of new people, but sometimes even familiar ones feel strange. Shinpei thinks it might be because of tourists. Mio laughs, teasing him for sounding like a city boy. At the funeral, Shinpei thinks about his close bond with Ushio. When he lost his parents 10 years ago, Ushio's family took him in, so she was more like a sister than just a friend. He remembers how she once asked him to cook curry for her before he left the island. He said he'd do it next time, but that next time never came. Their friend So hugs Shinpei and cries. He tells Shinpei that Ushio drowned trying to save a little girl. So feels guilty for not being able to help her and even tells Shinpei to hit him if it would make him feel better. Shinpei says it's okay and tries to comfort him. So explains that the girl Ushio saved, Shiori, hasn't spoken since the accident. He also says something strange. Ushio had marks on her neck that looked like she was strangled. But there wasn't enough proof, so it was called an accident. Only a few people know about this. Mio, So's dad, the police, and him. That night, Shinpei cooks curry for Mio and their friend Alan, just like Ushio wanted. During dinner, a police officer notices Mio standing outside, staring at the house. After the meal, Mio gives Shinpei Ushio's necklace and hugs him, crying. She says she'll never forgive whoever caused Ushio's death. When Shinpei asks if she knows anything, she avoids the question and jokes about letting him take the bath first. She promises to stop crying, saying Ushio wouldn't want her to stay sad forever. Later, Shinpei looks at the necklace and remembers giving it to Ushio. She had loved it so much. The next day, Shinpei helps Alan reopen his diner to stay busy. A drunk man named Nakamura asks Shinpei if he's found the woman he's looking for, a woman with glasses and a big chest. Shinpei is confused and ignores him. Later, the island's only police officer, Tetsu, comes by. Mio asks why he didn't eat breakfast, and Tetsu says the Kobayakawa family, who own Koba Mart, has disappeared. Their store didn't open, and when someone looked inside their house, it was empty. Tetsu thinks they ran away because of money problems. Hearing this, Mio runs outside, upset, and Shinpei follows her. Mio tells Shinpei something strange. Before the accident, Shiori said she saw a girl who looked exactly like her. After that, Shiori felt like someone was watching her. While they're talking, a man named Jinjiro Nizu interrupts. He points at Mio and asks if she's seen the shadow. Mio introduces him as a hunter. Nizu explains something spooky about the island. He says there's something called shadow sickness. A long time ago, people believed that if you saw your shadow, it would soon kill you and take your place. Then, it would pretend to be you and harm your family. Jinjiro tells Shinpei and Mio about an old story his grandfather told him. He says people who had shadow sickness used to visit Hiriko's shrine to get better. Mio remembers her grandmother telling her something similar when she was little. Then, Mio admits something strange. 3 days before Ushio died, she saw Ushio's shadow. She explains that they were picking up trash with others when Ushio pointed out her shadow to Mio. Mio says the shadow suddenly disappeared right in front of them. At first, Shinpei thinks she's joking, but she insists it's true. Since she hasn't told anyone else, Shinpei suggests they visit Hiriko's shrine, as Jinjiro mentioned. Shinpei recalls that Hiriko's shrine is also called Hito Shrine, located deep in the island's northern forest. When they reach the shrine, they find the door locked. Suddenly, Mio sees someone moving through the trees. She spots a figure and shouts that it's Shiori. They try to catch up to her but can't. Shinpei wonders why Shiori would run away if it was really her. Then, they hear a loud gunshot and rush toward the sound. They find the woman with glasses, the one Shinpei bumped into on the boat earlier. She's lying on the ground, bleeding from a gunshot wound. Mio panics and tells Shinpei to stay with the woman while she runs to get help. The injured woman tries to speak and says she failed, but before she can finish, she's shot in the head. Shocked, Shinpei turns to see another version of Mio holding a gun and taking the real Mio hostage. This shadow version of Mio says something strange about finishing the job and then shoots both Mio and Shinpei. Shinpei wakes up on the boat, startled. It's like he's back at the beginning of the day. He bumps into the woman with glasses again, and she slaps him like before. This time, she notices he looks scared and asks if he's okay. Shinpei is confused. He remembers her from the forest but wonders how she's back here. Checking his phone, Shinpei sees it's July 22nd, even though he remembers events from the 23rd. He tries to tell himself it was just a bad dream. He thinks it might have been influenced by a book he read called Swamp Man, a story about a girl who believes her family and friends have been replaced by imposters. When Shinpei arrives on the island, everything feels exactly the same as before. Mio crashes her bike into the water again, but this time, Shinpei notices her brake wire has been cut. The day unfolds just like before, Ushio's funeral, making curry, and Mio's strange behavior. That evening, Shinpei steps outside for fresh air and overhears the police officer, Tetsu, mentioning Mio standing in front of the house. But Mio should be inside, and she's not wearing her school uniform anymore. Suddenly, Shinpei sees what looks like Mio stabbing Tetsu with a knife. Realizing this isn't the real Mio, Shinpei watches as a flash of light happens, and another figure appears from the shadow version of Mio. This new figure becomes a copy of Tetsu. The shadow version of Tetsu touches the real Tetsu, causing his body to disappear in another bright flash. Shadow Mio tells Shadow Tetsu to hand over his gun. She explains that the real Mio hasn't been replaced yet. She says her earlier attempt to kill Mio failed, but she'll try again. Shadow Mio mentions that she won't act now because it would draw attention, but she's keeping an eye on things. At that moment, Shinpei's phone vibrates. It's a call from So, who had promised to share more details earlier. The noise gives away Shinpei's hiding spot. Shadow Mio finds him and stabs him in the neck. As Shinpei collapses, he hears Shadow Mio talking to Shadow Tetsu about Shinpei being something, but he's too weak to understand. Shinpei's vision fades, and he feels like he's floating above his body. In this strange space, he hears Ushio's voice warning him to protect Mio and be careful. Suddenly, Shinpei wakes up again on July 22nd, back on the boat. This time, knowing what will happen to Mio's bike, he positions himself in front of her to stop her from crashing. He ends up falling into the water instead. Since he can't swim, Mio jumps in to save him. Elsewhere, the woman with glasses, Hizuru, is hanging upside down from a tree while recording herself. She talks about how long she's been on the island and what she's eaten. She says hanging upside down helps her think better because it increases blood flow to her head. Shinpei watches Shiori from a distance. She says, is hiding among the people and decides to keep observing for now. Later that evening, Shinpei makes a fake call to Officer Tetsu, reporting a fight to distract him and keep him away from Shadow Mio. Then, Shinpei deletes apps from his phone to free up space and places it outside the house to record anything unusual. While setting it up, he notices something strange. His right eye has changed color, but he has no idea when or how it happened. Worried about Mio's safety, Shinpei peeks into the bathroom to check on her. She catches him and hits him in the face with the shower head, calling him a pervert. The next morning, Shinpei retrieves his phone and shows Mio the recording. The footage clearly shows a shadow lurking near her at night. Shinpei warns Mio that shadows are after her, just like they went after Ushio before her death. Mio assumes Ushio must have told him this and realizes a shadow killed Ushio. Shinpei explains how shadows can duplicate humans and warns Mio to stay alert. Mio suggests talking to Shiori since she also saw her shadow, but Shinpei refuses. He doesn't want to risk Mio getting hurt. Determined to investigate on his own, Shinpei goes to Koba Mart but finds it closed. A local named Shiomi finds it odd and rings the doorbell, but no one answers. They notice the door is unlocked and step inside. The table is set with untouched food, and the TV is still on, but the house is empty. While Shiomi checks upstairs, Shinpei finds black stains on the floor, similar to the ones left by Shadow Tetsu. He realizes the Kobayakawa family was attacked during dinner the night before. He also notices dents on the floor, signs of a struggle. Upstairs, Shinpei encounters Shiori. She asks why he questioned her the previous day and why he's staring at her. Shinpei quickly realizes she's a shadow, remembering her strange behavior at the funeral. When Shiori creates another shadow, Shinpei understands the flash he saw at the funeral was the start of his shadow sickness. Before the situation escalates, Shiomi shows up and Shiori leaves. Shinpei calls the police to report the Kobayakawa family missing. He decides to save the woman with glasses this time and begins searching for her at various inns. However, no one has seen her. Shinpei talks to Nakamura, who tells him she only visited his coffee shop. Shinpei remembers he'll meet a drunk Nakamura later that day and plans to ask him about her again. Back at Kofun's diner, Shinpei sees Officer Tetsu. Before Tetsu can ask about the fake fight, Shinpei interrupts by offering his usual order, which Tetsu accepts. Tetsu mentions the Kobayakawa family is missing and says a mainland detective will arrive that evening. Shinpei notes this is the real Tetsu and not a shadow. Tetsu then gives Shinpei Ushio's phone. He explains that Ushio visited him a day before her death and left the phone, asking him to give it to Shinpei if something happened to her. So arrives, and Shinpei decides to tell him everything, including the fact that shadows are targeting Mio. So wonders if there's a way to tell shadows apart from humans, but Shinpei doesn't know of one. Mio suggests going to Hiriko Shrine for answers. Shinpei hesitates, knowing Shadow Mio might be there. So points out that the shrine will be crowded during the festival tomorrow. This gives Shinpei an idea. It might be safer to go during the festival with so many people around. He convinces everyone to wait until then. So also suggests they create a secret code, and Mio jokes about using something from Mesopotamian culture.